it feels in the deck, honestly.
So with that, let's go ahead and get ready for our next series, Language Hacker versus Monsanto. We already see a different ban strategy coming in. We kind of talked about how Warrior might be on permaban status heading into the day, and it looks like it was for a while. However, one of the reasons why I appreciate Language Hacker and what he brings to the table is that he likes to approach things differently. It almost feels like he specifically tries to go against the grain, even though that's not always the case, but very oftentimes is. And this week, he decided to not change too much, interestingly enough. He chose to bring Spell Druid once more, despite the fact that Spell Druid has been falling lower and lower onto people's tier lists with each passing week. Yeah. So what do we think about this Spell Druid being in the lineup with no ban on the Warrior?
Well, it leads me to believe that he has faith that he can beat Warrior, which a lot of players don't. And I don't know how much respect I'd give to the Zoo Warlock, but I guess Spell Druid changes things. We saw how much success Spell Druid could have in the first couple weeks. Granted, it got targeted last week because there was just a lot of aggro decks. But the thing about these tempo decks that we're seeing is, while they're great at dealing with like the normal tempo battles, which is just minion combat the early game, they're not great at dealing with these big wide boards without specific setups, right? The Rogue needs Flick or Waste Warden, which nobody's including Waste Warden. Demon Hunter needs Altruist almost specifically, and Warrior can do it a little bit easier with Risky Skipper, but because they usually have a slower start, you can use things like Soul of the Forest or go for big exotic mouse turns to play around Risky Skipper.
It's true.
So I think that's what he's trying to take advantage of. Jury's still out on whether or not it's going to work, because he's the only player doing it. There's a lot of players in APAC doing it. APAC valued the Spell Druid a lot more, but Language Hacker is I believe he's the lone Druid. Yeah, he's the only Druid.
I believe he's the only person playing Druid, yes, with the Spell Druid as the approach. Versus everyone else seems to be favoring the Warrior Rogue, Demon Hunter, and the Warlock lineups, as we were talking about. And most of them kind of consolidating across similar archetypes. There's variations amongst those classes, like Rogue, for example. Monsanto playing the Secret Rogue Galakron package versus the Stealth that we've seen from a lot of people. And then, of course, Language Hacker playing Highlander Rogue. Highlander Rogue making its way into several lineups this week. And it was one of those things that was pretty interesting, because we were like theory crafting of whether or not defensive slow decks like Mage and Priest might be more represented going into week number 4, but it seems like almost everybody wanted to be ahead of that and try to pressure those slower decks. So curious how that ends up working out, right? Like, who ends up going for a level 1 versus a level 2 versus a level 3 strategy?
Well, Language Hacker has a Waste Warden in his deck, so whatever level he's on, it's probably not right.
Wow.
I don't know. That's a little harsh. Maybe it's right. He's playing Highlander Rogue, so to be fair, the 27th through 30th cards, you have a little bit of wiggle room. And if you're thinking to yourself, I lose to Druid if I don't put a Waste Warden in my deck, and it only takes up 1 card, and at the very least it's 5 mana deal 3. 5 mana 3/3 that deals 3. Whatever. But maybe Language Hacker, since he brought Druid himself and had more respect for it, he teched his other decks to beat it. So, don't know. A couple tech decisions that are pretty interesting in his rogue.
Yeah, but not much tech to think about when you get Edwin Van Cleef as an early possibility. However, he did pick up Dragon's Horde, so this allows him to get a legendary from a different class, which will incidentally activate Vendetta. So then next turn, he gets to play Dragon's Horde, discover another minion from a legendary from another class, then play Vendetta for free, and then coin out the Edwin with Backstab. That is absurd amounts of statistics. And kind of like we're talking about, Monsanto's best answer to that would be freezing with the Frozen Shadow Weaver. That's like your only like temporary response while you try to scramble together a game plan, if you
I
can.
grow impatient.
Is it
Yeah.
cold in the
Oh, well, and there
shadows?
goes the Frozen Shadow Weaver, so Edwin has no answer. That's
Right.
a big one.
And it looks good on paper. It's a 4/3. It's on curve. It freezes, kind of protects a little bit of your 1/1. But yeah, this is going to be pretty nasty. He finds a no duplicate
The pleasure is
effect
mine.
with the Elise. But
His
he ends up
hand-
choosing Madame Lazul. Okay.
Yeah, I think his hand was a little too full to pick an Elise.
I mean, it's not going to be that full after this.
Sure, yeah. I mean, he could have followed that up with Elise, but yeah, I think, like you said, I think he just wants to find a play for next turn.
Yeah, he was not.
Makes
He didn't
sense.
have anything on turn 4, so that makes the most sense here.
Yeah.
Monsanto with an eyebrow raise. Yeah, that's hard to beat. Spectrosight can dig, see if there's any answers. I don't think.
I don't think he has a consume magic tucked
Right.
into this deck anywhere.
Yeah, talk about time for tech cards. You wish you had some answer to this, but I'm not seeing anything.
Hey, I got you, friend.
Monsanto might be able to figure out a way to piece together removal through things like Glaive Battle Depth, but his hope is that Language Hacker has nothing in him, so to speak. That he'll be just kind of floating all of his mana, and that he wouldn't be able to keep up the tempo, that he like all in. And that's not the case.
Oh, he has 3 turns.
Well, funnily enough,
On the
just-
Frozen Shadow.
Madame Lazul in this position is also hilariously effective in a way, like because we know Monsanto's hand, and Language Hacker has picked up a better tempo play because freezing on 5 or heading into 5 seems to be the thing, as Monsanto concedes.
Highlander
But,
deck, by the way.
That Lazul would have also been super nutty because any one of those things would have been super sick because he had the dagger, so if he picked it and his opponent adept, he would be able to use the battle cry against it,
Yeah.
for example.
Well, that's just one of those games, Dan. Just one of those games.
Yeah, and ultimately why Rogue just can't be underestimated because they do stuff like that. It's mainly centered around early game boards like Edwin Van Cleef, but it could have just been another assortment of just like a godlike draw, because they have cards like Zephyrus and Shadow Step in their deck, and if you're able to even withstand that, there's opportunities for them to Galakron and High Spear and Togwoggle and cheese stuff out really cheap. The Rogue is just very versatile, and as a result, has truly no unwinnable matchups, despite it being tough on paper.
Yeah.
So with that, let's go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we're going to get into game number 2 between Language Hacker and Monsanto. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hearthstone Grandmasters is brought to you by T-Mobile, helping you stay connected to what matters most. Learn about T-Mobile's COVID-19 response on T-Mobile.com.
Welcome, everybody, to the first ever Awkward Tall Guys Club meeting. I've invited everybody that is 6'2/190 centimeters or above, and included, of course, myself, the tallest of all of the Hearthstone casters. And I just wanted to just do an interview about what life is like. I think we'd all be better Hearthstone players if we didn't spend so much time trying to find pants that fit.
Very true. And I don't know, like you just keep looking and trying, but it just doesn't work out.
They don't sell our sizes ever.
I'm on the limit. I have to go 5 stars and I find my size.
Snaps for now, get done, everybody. Do you ever get tired of being asked, how tall are you?
Yes, I do get tired at times. And, sometimes people just don't understand that we tall people don't necessarily like being too tall.
But sometimes it's like, I want to be in front of the photo, I always have to be in the back.
It's like we don't exist to them.
Snaps for Viper. We obviously all played basketball. I played center. Sometimes I wish people just didn't assume that. Did people assume you play sports?
Yeah.
I did play it, but they
Yeah,
could
but
not
like,
assume it, right?
yeah, they assume it of us.
It sucked though because I was never that good at basketball. I had a dream that I would become a tall, strong athlete. But here I am today,
Just tall and strong.
just tall.
I'm sorry, Casper. Not really a question here, but how bull is hide and seek?
It's just
They
I don't
always
know.
find us.
Yeah.
I feel like when people are looking at me, they just see nostrils. That was really good first session. Let's bring you in for a hug, shall we?
Yes. I never found any pants that fit.
Don't think about it. It's just gonna make you depressed.
Hearthstone Grandmasters for the Americas continues as we are in the middle of the third match for today. Language Hacker versus Monsanto currently ongoing as Language Hacker's up 1-0 after that very decisive game one victory. Felt like the past few games, TJ, that we've had has been a little bit lopsided. So looking forward to see if this one can be a little bit more contested as that very quick Van Cleef put an end to things for Monsanto's Demon Hunter. Going into game number 2, Monsanto's going to switch to Warrior. This is the class that's been banned the most so far today. And we are calling it Aggro Warrior. I do think there's a couple of other ways you can frame it. Some people like to call it Pain Warrior. Some people like to call it Egg Warrior, No Hands Warrior. But there's been a little bit of innovation, most notably through the Grommash Hell Scream that you see at the very top end. I played a lot of this deck this past week and only dropped 2 games total when I played this deck. And I feel like people who are calling it the current best deck in the metagame, there's a lot of backing to that. It seems like this deck can do everything, and with Grom added to the mix, it truly feels like at all junctions of the game, you have to respect their damage from hand as well as the potential explosiveness on board. So I love it. I think this Warrior deck is great, and I'm a big
I am as well. And I said at the beginning of the broadcast that I will be surprised if anybody but Frozen doesn't ban it. And so I am surprised that Language Hacker banned it. He banned Zoo Warlock instead, which is still not a deck that I respect. But I understand that a lot of players in Grandmasters have had success with it thus far. Its win rate is good. And yeah, at a higher level, it's an even better deck. But I still would, even with Language Hacker's lineup, if I was in this position, I would ban the worst, though, just because I think that deck is crazy good. But we'll see. We'll see how things turn out. Monsanto starts off with the Sky Raider. No weapons in hand, no Corsair Cache, but does have a Risky Skipper and Battle Rage, which is the key for pretty much every other thing that happens in the deck. So he's good to go for now.
Yes. For now. Bit of an awkward turn 2 here for Monsanto. I don't think Risky Skipper is something you really play haphazardly against Demon Hunter. I would say that Risky Skipper is the most important card in this matchup. Followed closely by things that combo with Risky Skipper, like the Battle Rage in the hand, of course, Armor Smith,
Bomb Wrangler.
Bomb Wrangler's great with it. Blood Boil Brute also being a very important card as the game continues to develop. Language Hacker, with the Sightless Watcher, trying to set up the best scenario for turn 3. Finds Crimson Sigil Runner for an Outcast, but is that good enough? Maybe Umberwings is better?
Time grows short.
That one's tough, actually.
Yeah, I feel like you can make a case for either the Umberwing or the Crimson Sigil Runner. I don't know if there's any merit to having a second Skull of Gul'dan.
I don't know about that. I think there's merit to Skull as well. I think there's always merit to Skull.
Okay, sure. I mean, Skull of Gul'dan is a fantastic card, so you can definitely think about it. The only reason why I say that is because Language Hacker, if he does play another Skull, then he's going to essentially be drawing cards and not developing on the board nearly as much unless the Skull hits specifically ways to answer the board. And it feels like I'd rather do it in the opposite way. I would develop and then play Skull, as opposed to play Skull and then develop.
Yeah. No, I agree.
They will never catch me.
Ah, there's the beaming sidekick.
Okay, so, I mean, a lot of these Tempo Demon Hunters are playing these cheap 1-drops like Sidekick to help amplify their early game board strength. However, they all come crumbling down under the might of Risky Skipper, and so Language Hacker has to be very careful not to overextend here. Because he can play long. So that's one of the things about Demon Hunter hand right now, is that it's indicating that Language Hacker can go a lot longer into this game than some more aggressive hands that play, say, the Frenzied Fellwing, and you just kind of vomit your entire hand to the board, and then you're just kind of out of resources.
Hey, I got you, friend.
Important to note, by the way, that Monsanto has his Horde Pillager, so he can keep up the Lackey generation and the weapons for quite some time. That might be really impactful on the board.
Yeah, it could also help him to have a play on turn 4 right now before he gets to like Risky Skipper territory, because oftentimes the sweet spot against Demon Hunter is being able to have 2 minions that you play alongside it. Though without Anchor and with Battle Rage kind of being stranded in hand if he goes for that type of play too early, these turns are going to start to get a little difficult, right? Especially since he's also under some pressure. Sure, he could go for a swing with the Livewire Lance here and then a Horde Pillager to re-up the weapon. But then what's his follow-up beyond that? Risky Skipper, Bomb Wrangler, Titanic Lackey seems okay, but then he needs those things to stick or else his Battle Rage is all of a sudden cut off.
Yeah. Kind of a tough situation, to be honest.
Plays Horde Pillager, he's accepting a lot of damage.
Yeah, I think the Risky Skipper here is still good because they're cutting off a huge portion of their damage. They've already committed cards like Twin Slice.
Treasure? Loot?
Whoa, the greed! And Monsanto thought about it for a long time and says, I can hold this. I can hold this damage and feel okay about it. Now, I think if I'm Language Hacker,
Yeah.
do you think this means that he has the read entirely, that this is Risky Skipper hand? I think so, right?
Probably. I mean, there could be any number of things, but Risky Skipper seems the most likely. It's just what's alongside the Risky Skipper is kind of the big question. But honestly, for Language Hacker, it just doesn't matter. Like,
Right.
his game plan doesn't really change. He just pushes as much damage as possible and then reacts to whatever Monsanto does. Of course, he can make his plays, his board stronger against Risky Skipper, but that's only if he has the cards to do that, which he doesn't. So it's just push damage each turn and react to whatever Monsanto does.
So Risky Skipper here is very good. What does Monsanto choose to attach his Titanic Lackey to is the question that I have in my mind. He could use it on the Bomb Wrangler, right, to get like maximum board presence. A lot of times when you're playing Risky Skipper, you're trying to think about how to swing the board entirely, so Bomb Wrangler generates a lot of offense. The other candidate was Serpent Egg, and the reason why Serpent Egg might have also looked reasonable was because you can squeeze in another Lackey and potentially do other things, but then the Risky Skipper might just clear off your own board, which is also part of the risk.
Not the bomb.
Oh yeah? You want a Titanic Lackey the Boombot?
Yeah.
I want the Boombot to go face right now. That's partially why.
I don't know if I want the Boobot to go face.
Interesting.
Because by
Really interesting.
taunting up the Boombot, you allow the Boombot to do even more damage to face. It would also get to attack. Because he would have to trade into it next turn with his Warglaves. I don't know, just a thought.
True. It is a little bit weaker to... I don't know, actually, yeah. I mean, I think it's fine either way.
Yeah.
Because this technically generates another bomb as well.
So would the other way.
Guaranteed.
Because you'd save a bomb on board, you'd have 2 bombs.
It's true. Well, Language Hacker goes for the attack the face, presenting what could be a 2-turn lethal. And Monsanto doesn't have the Armor Smith. Language Hacker saw that last turn there was no Armor Smith commit, which would have been 100% played last turn. Monsanto does not find another Titanic Lackey.
Ugh.
And this is one of those moments where you might have to get really desperate if you're Monsanto. I think the first thing in my mind that I think I'm working with 4 mana this turn because I want a hero power.
Yes.
But what does that leave you with?
Well,
Is that like...
do you need the hero power? What do you die to if you don't hero power?
You die to the Metamorphosis.
You don't die to Metamorphosis. Not this turn.
If you hero power, you don't die to Metamorphosis.
Yes, if you hero power, you don't die to Metamorphosis.
You don't hero power.
You do die to Metamorphosis, okay. Great. And you would die to... Gladebound Adam as well. So yeah.
Okay.
That was correct.
Skull of Gul'dan finds...
Altruist, okay.
And
Gladebound
too
Adam.
expensive. 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 power represented onto the board.
The thing about Altruist, though, is with bombs on board,
I grow impatient.
it's
Unless
very risky.
the bombs get buffed.
Unless the bombs get buffed, sure, but if you're relying on multiple Altruists, even if they get buffed, you still have a chance.
Yeah, and it's in Language Hacker's best interest to not play minions onto the board so the bombs don't have anything to trade into. Right now, Monsanto would have lethal if he finds a way to damage his own board and use Rampage.
Time grows short.
So Anchor is lethal. Core Elite is lethal. Grom. Oh no, Grom wouldn't have mana. Inner Rage is lethal. Risky Skipper is lethal. Corsair Cache is lethal. There's a lot. Armor Smith is not lethal.
Yeah, although he can Battle Rage to draw another.
Yep. Could he get anything from Draconic Lackey? If only Dragon Ball Scorcher was still in the game.
Right.
There it is.
Oh, snap.
Oh,
Yeah, that'll do it.
yeah. I mean, that was like not the greatest start for Monsanto, but you could tell just how powerful Risky Skipper is in the matchup because all he needed to do was go for it for one turn, and then somehow he just had enough damage. I mean, he had 4 weapon swings that like all went to face. Like, it felt like the damage snuck up on him, snuck up on Language Hacker, and one sort of kind of dead turn was what did him in because it just allowed Monsanto to push enough to have a bunch of lethal outs on that last turn.
Right, and then alternatively, you know, nerfs like Altruist costing a little bit more and, you know, all those other cards really do add up and make Demon Hunter sometimes stall out in their draw. So a much needed victory here for Monsanto. If that warrior went down to Demon Hunter and it was just left to Druid, Language Hacker would just be in a really good spot. Even if you could argue that all of those decks would be better against Druid and favored, it just feels like eventually Language Hacker will find a way for the Druid to get there. But I am curious. You know, again, the question mark still looms and descends even lower as we progress through the series. Can the Druid get through for Language Hacker?
Well, Dan, we're going to see. He's going to queue it up now. And this is pretty similar to the list that we've seen. He's got Kel'Thas, 1 Mount Seller, and 1 Forest Aid. He also has Starfall, which is good in the mirror matchup and surprisingly good against Demon Hunter. Because most of their stuff has 2 health, and you can use that as a defensive tool and buy time to get to your other stuff. But we've seen it mostly included in Druid lists that expect the mirror. So, we'll see. Fungal Fortunes is a good start.
Fungal Fortune is absolutely one of the core cards that you have early game as the Druid. And you need ramp. Card draw and ramp. Most important things heading into it. But against decks like Demon Hunter, you do need the category of removal as well, because cards like Battle Fiend can get out of hand quickly. So it's going to be a tricky situation if Monsanto can get out to a quick start. I think a lot of times in this spot specifically, people wonder if they should be coining out 2 1-mana minions. And against Druid in particular, I think it's really important to consider it. Largely because Druid likes to play cards on 2, and they like to specifically play card draw. So if you like coin out another 1-drop, Fungal Fortunes becomes even riskier to play. However, of course, if you do, you risk messing up your curve. Monsanto doesn't exactly have a good way to activate the Satyr Overseer. It would be like 3 turns until he gets it. So I think that's something that's totally valid to just take it slow. That being said, I mean, Monsanto's hand's anything but slow. It's kind of quick. And once more, he's going to pass here. So if you take a look at Language Hacker, who has no ramp draw, he's just going to remove here. The Bog Beam that's just being drawn, he has an option to do that. I think the most important thing that's in Language Hacker's mind is how can I get away with using this Glowfly Swarm on the next turn? What's the most safe way to go about it? Do I use Moonfire here? And I don't think you do.
And I think I'm back.
Weakness.
Apologies for that.
No apologies necessary.
Hey, I got you, friend.
No, Dan. Apologies very necessary. What did I miss? It looks like Demon Hunter's beating up the Druid.
Yeah, so Monsanto had a coin opportunity, but chose to save it for the Satyr Overseer power play, and now Language Hacker has his own power play. And now Monsanto, does he clear off the entire board of Druid? I think he's got to.
That's kind of an expensive clear, but
Right.
he's got enough stuff to do it, and at least he gets some more Satyr Overseer stuff. Chaos Strike will allow for a little bit of reload, it seems.
Yeah,
And
that Twin Slice was a really good pickup.
oh yeah, because a lot of them kill off one extra, and I'm pretty sure this means he gets to only leave one minion on board if he trades over his 2 1/1s here. Actually, he could trade his 2. He could clear up everything, but if he, yeah, I don't know. I was gonna say he could leave him vulnerable to Starfall, but I don't think that matters. If he's worried about Starfall, then he'd trade in these 2 1/1s to one of these, and then go face with the Satyr Overseer.
Time grows short.
Because then at least he gets to push some extra damage. If he's not worried about it, then he might as well just clear everything.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like you'd be under significant threat if you leave it up, but there are some value trades for Language Hacker to pick up. Right? He could trade into the 2/2, for example, and move on with his day. Play another Glowfly Swarm is also a possibility. If Language Hacker pulls the trigger on yet a follow-up series of Glowfly Swarm tokens, then Monsanto needs that extra 2/2 to help clear. So I think that's entirely justified.
Well, Language Hacker's got some decisions to make. Wild Growth Moonfire Hero Power seems to be the play that stood out to me the most, but that leaves him stranded next turn unless he picks up a 0-mana spell for Kael'thas. And then if he picks up a 0-mana spell, it makes so he's not picking up the Overflow, which is the card that kind of needs in this position to get more stuff on board. He really just hasn't much going for him. I mean, the other play is to Bog Beam the Cane and then Moonfire Hero Power, the Satyr Overseer, to take as much stuff away on board. But then your Kael'thas is completely stranded, and you have to spend your whole next turn wild growthing effectively. So he's just going to go for it, but I mean, it's hard to piece together a good sequence of draws for Language Hacker that get him onto the board enough. Oh yeah,
That's beautiful. And the Glaive Bound Adept off the top. Language Hacker comes onto the Kael'thas turn, but with no free spells besides Bog Beam. Doesn't seem like it's going to happen. This Druid... well, maybe the Bog Beam can do something here. And... oh! A Rusher? Diving Griffin to help get that 4 damage? Oh my gosh. What is happening?
Oh, that looks pretty good to me.
Yeah, so now the question becomes, is it throwing the game to leave up the Mount Cellar?
I don't think so. This still beats. I guess not.
He's worried about Overflow.
Yes, but it feels like it still beats Overflow over 2 turns. I'm not sure. He would have to get Overflow plus a bunch of 0-mana spells and a bunch of taunts plus Crystal Power. Because he would push 8 this turn. Overflow would heal him back up to 7, and then outside of taunts plus Overflow, he still wins because he has just the Hero Power, Chaos Strike Hero Power again next turn.
It's true, although if you anticipate taunts to come out, you should play Chaos Strike now, so that you could layer over the next couple.
Yeah, but then
Monsanto says, you know what? I'm just not going to even give you the time.
Oh, he's killing it.
Ooh, okay. I think Language Hacker is actually really happy to see that.
Well, he did draw the overflow.
My God.
And if he draws like Crystal Power 0 mana spells, then this play is going to be rewarded.
Right. And, I mean, what a breath of fresh air for Language Hacker. That would have been a pretty severe punish.
Yeah.
Monsanto went face.
Yep.
So, very good recognition of the situation here by Monsanto. But also, is this not enough now?
Yeah, that
Feels like-
that's my concern, honestly, because Monsanto's playing the pretty lean version that tops out at Skull of Gul'dan. Is only like burst damage from the deck outside of the Metamorphosis is the Altruist and Gladebond Adept. He's used one Gladebond Adept, he's used Metamorphosis, he's used Kane. Looks like he has Altruist. And if there's a board at all, he loses to Altruist. He loses even if
Wow.
he draws Altruist.
TJ.
My people are addicted to
This is going to be a very important turn here for Language Hacker. Well, I think he can just Starfall if he needs to just clear the board here. And he's already seen Kane, he's already seen Metamorphosis.
Yeah.
Iron Bar.
There it is. And that'll do it.
Yeah, Monsanto doesn't have a way to end this game anymore, and now Kael'thas will survive on board. Beaming sidekick. Pass. And Language Hacker finds the crystal power.
I just wonder if he's supposed to go face with that Metamorphosis and the minions.
I mean, that would be the difference maker right here. But, of course, that's assuming Mount Seller didn't just also put up a wave of taunts. And,
Yeah.
you know, we had the luxury of knowing the hand. Language Hacker had Kael'thas and all these crazy, powerful cards. But if Monsanto said, like, if he, as long as he doesn't have Kael'thas, it should be okay. And also, Language Hacker did draw the overflow right there and then.
Yeah.
I yield.
I don't know. The going face of the Metamorph means the only thing that beats him is overflow into taunts.
Right.
Instead of now, like, his other play means that overflow. Like, Language Hacker's next turn was just overflow at that point, and Monsanto still couldn't capitalize on it, and I couldn't even think of, like, a draw in his deck outside of maybe Skull into Skull or something along those lines that would be able to punish it heavy enough. That's a tough spot. It's a really tough spot just because of Mount Seller's power, and there are quite a few taunt beasts in the pool right now. The pool is limited, or at least more limited than it's been because of the rotation, so Silverback Patriarchs, Ironfur Grizzlies are more likely because there's just less beasts overall.
Yeah, well, I think that a lot of times when you're in that position, you feel a lot farther ahead than you potentially are.
Yeah.
And so that kind of makes you create a bunch of scenarios like, well, how do I lose from this spot? And then by playing a little bit too conservatively, you actually give Language Hacker the ability to respond because he didn't draw that second form of healing, Crystal Power, until the very end. So that extra damage did make that difference. Tough to say, right? Because obviously this is a complete parallel universe timeline that we're talking about, that Monsanto's up 2-1. But now he's down 1-2. And is turning to his Galakrond Rogue to take down the Demon Hunter. Language Hacker's mystery deck, the Druid, getting that win was huge.
Yeah. Performing better than Zoo Warlock. That's for sure. Well, Monsanto playing the secret variant of the Galakrond Rogue with Shadow Jeweler Hanar, plus the he's playing double ambush, 1 bamboozle, 1 dirty tricks, which I think has become pretty common.
Too soon.
Very often it was 2 dirty tricks, 1 ambush, 1 bamboozle, if you wanted to narrow it down to 4 secrets. But because of how tempo-based the metagame is right now, having an ambush can sometimes just interrupt your opponent's turn or help you fight for board a little bit better in the early game.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how Language Hacker is able to fight against the Rogue that has a reasonable curve. Like, you don't actually often see Rogue play stuff on one outside of Pharaoh Cat, so the Blackjack Stunner coming out here immediately must be introducing questions for Language Hacker. How does he go about it? Does he, for example, choose to coin out an Umberwing instead? Or a Sightless Watch and try to contest knowing that's going to die? Or does he just kind of play the normal curve and save the coin for sometime later? Is he going to twin slice this? Woo! Oh, interesting.
Big resources used.
Yeah.
Kill a 1/2.
Well, if you think about it abstractly, it's kind of similar to what Rogue would do with Backstab.
Yeah, very similarly. And also, by playing a 1-drop onto the board like that, Monsanto's saying that I don't care that Blackjack Stunner could have a crazy effect later on in the game. I need to get on the board and get tempo now. And for the exact reasons like this, Praise Galakron now is stranded. He could have Praise Galakron plus Lackey this turn if Language Hacker had left that up. And even though Twin Slice is kind of similar to Rogue as like an activator, Twin Slice maybe comes out on top because you can split it up. It still gives him a huge amount of tempo in a tempo matchup, which A+.
All right, well, Language Hacker now has all that tempo, all that twin slice commitment has set up this scenario for him to grab the most amount of board presence as he would like. Now, the Umberwing and the Sightless Watcher, you can convince me of either one of them, considering that it even curves out nicely with each other.
Yeah. Umberwing means the Battle Fiend gets to keep growing.
Time grows short.
Which damage good. Now Monsanto realistically has to just eviscerate this Battle Fiend. You could also Praise Galakron it first. Because based on his turns, it just doesn't seem like he's going to have a turn to Praise Galakron. So he might as well get it out of the way to find a Lackey.
Maybe the Kobold Lackey? Nah. No one's that good at Hearthstone, TJ.
No. No one. Not a single player gets Kobold Lackey right when they need it. Ooh. So there are 2 Warglaze of Azzinoth tucked away here. And we're still a couple turns away from Skull. So if he picks Skull, he's at the risk of it being stranded for a while. Altruist, there's just nothing for Altruist to really combo with except the coin in the hand. So that leads me to believe that Chaos Strike is the only real choice out of those. We'll see what he decided to go with, but it seemed like the right pick in my mind.
Yeah.
Well, finally, Backstab.
Yeah, and an opportunity for Monsanto to finally get ahead on board with Language Hacker's kind of awkward double Warglaze of Azzinoth setup. And Monsanto has that Faceless Corruptor, so really wants to find a way to keep this 2-2 on the board. Probably worth considering parting ways with Backstab here on the Sightless Watcher, so that way he can keep his Devoted Maniac at 2 life.
Yeah. Otherwise, his play next turn is looking quite weak. And quite weak it shall stay.
Right. Unless, with Monsanto, is there a draw that can bail him out of this scenario?
Shield of Galakron, I was about to say, is probably the best draw, just because it puts something in the way. He doesn't have Frozen Shadow Weaver. He only has 1 Devoted Maniac, and nothing else to play on 4, and only Faceless and Shield of Galakron on 5. So Outside of that, it would have been like a secret plus something. I don't know.
Right. Sequencing question here for Language Hacker, as he could choose to Chaos Strike then Sightless Watcher, or Sightless Watcher then Chaos Strike and guarantee whatever he draws is playable. So with this, he can, for example, pick the Sidekick or Battle Mage, then play Chaos Strike, draw it, play that 1-drop, and shoot through the shield.
Demons.
That sounds entirely reasonable to me. The Beaming Sidekick seems worse against the Rogue right now, because when you're going to be Sidekick, you're going to give 2 health to Sightless Watcher, and that is vulnerable to the Faceless Corruptor.
Yeah.
So Battle Mage is just better.
Yeah.
You've already seen backstabs and 1 Devoted Maniac, so it's less likely your opponent has the answer to these 2 health.
Monsanto kind of running out of life here, but does have the Faceless Corruptor to fight back, which pairs quite nicely with a Faceless Lackey.
Yeah, is it ever worth going instead for a Ethereal Lackey?
To try and find a better way to deal with it? I'm not sure. I think I'd rather have the extra 2-drop on board.
So many options.
Option 3, the Draconic Lackey. So we can have maybe something to curve out into on turn 7. But what 7-mana dragon would he specifically be looking for that he wouldn't have the mana to try and dig
Too
for
soon.
next turn?
On wings of evil.
Evasive Draconid, potentially?
Yeah,
Thought of that
Basic
idea
Draconid.
completely on my own. I did not have any
Wow,
producer
Dan.
named Abar whisper that into my ear as
You're
a
so smart.
possibility.
So that play is to look specifically for Evasive Draconid. Which does make sense.
Yes. There's also the remote possibility that he gets low enough that he might be able to Alexstrasza himself, for example, to go back up to 15. I think the resolution of the game would actually come way before that. It would end up being relevant.
Yeah.
Because chances are he might actually kill Language Hacker by the time that happens.
And playing it specifically on that turn as opposed to Faceless means
Right.
he's looking for something for 7 mana specifically, because
Right.
he doesn't want to dig next turn. So
All
I guess that's a good spot for
points.
Monsanto, because right now his turn for next turn is pretty weak. If Language Hacker had a way to deal with his Faceless Corruptor, which he did, so imagine if he did find Evasive Draconid, then, I mean, he would look like a genius, right?
Yes.
It's like, oh my gosh, he made a weaker play to make a stronger play next turn. What a genius!
Well, Monsanto was looking for some high-impact minion off this Faceless Lurker, or Faceless Lackey, excuse me. Trying to taunt, for example, that'd be great. Otherwise, just guarantees the armor from the Galakron.
Yeah. And good sequencing by Monsanto. He's about to go Faceless Lackey first, but if he got Mana Wraith, then he would have been sad.
Yes. Okay. And
Start, we're getting close, Dan.
it's the same kind of scenarios we saw previously, where Language Hacker is so close to ending the game with Demon Hunter, but just he might die to the counter swing. This is scary.
In
Is he-
which case, does he kill the Kronks?
He dies to a Kronk Shadow Step, because Kronks will attack and then Shadow Step Kronks, but that's one of, or rather 2 of possibility. 10 power on the board. Language Hacker knows that this is the 4th invoke, and that will be a 5 damage weapon. Language Hacker's Demon Hunter can't get there. Constantly short just a few points of damage. And that's going to wrap it up as we go into game number 5 momentarily, and it'll be a showdown between Monsanto's Demon Hunter versus Language Hacker's Demon Hunter. That's not something that I expected going into it, TJ. the fact that Demon Hunters aren't able to get a win.
No, and the decks are very similar. The only difference is that Monsanto is playing 2 copies of Frenzied Fellwing, whereas Language Hacker is playing of Sightless Watcher. And the other player is playing 0 of either of those cards. They both have the Beaming Sidekicks. They both top out at Skull of Gul'dan. They both have the double Frozen Shadow Weaver, single Spectral Sight, double Chaos Strike. So
I think I like Monsanto a little bit better for the mirror. I think getting out that extra body in the form of the Frenzied Fellwing is a lot of times a difference maker, especially in the early game.
Speak to me.
And so if Monsanto draws the Frenzied Fellwing within the first 2 to 3 turns of the game, I would say that he's favored. If he doesn't, then Language Hacker's advantage by having the Spectral Watcher will be extended. However, I'm willing to stand corrected if someone can, like I'm sure there's a lot of players who have opinions on the subject. I'm open-minded about it. I'm not really married to this idea.
I'm incredibly close-minded when it comes to my tech choices.
Yeah.
Yep. Mine are the best. Charge minions in Zoo is wrong.
Ooh, wow. Just straight up calling it wrong.
Hey,
Not even just saying situational. The caster.
No, okay, it's
polite way.
situational. It's situational.
Now you're casting Hearthstone.
Yeah. It's situational.
Not bad. It's situational.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. How about that? That's the ultimate caster speak. It's an interesting choice.
I grow impatient.
Well, this isn't necessarily Beaming Sidekick's purpose in the matchup, but it is presenting an interesting turn for Monsanto. Language Hacker didn't really have a choice but to play it to try and challenge. And that's the benefit you have of being on the play. But now Monsanto's saying, hey, sure, go ahead. I'm just going to play 2 of them.
Never catch me.
Yeah, and a lot of these times when it comes down to the mirror, it feels very similar to somehow those Zoo Warlock mirrors of the past, where just having an extra 2/2 on the board can make the biggest difference of snowballing, and every single trade or preemptive trade
I grow impatient.
is crucial. Like, so for example, Language Hacker here has 2 options, the Umbra Wing or the Battlefield. You can actually squeeze out hero powers, but the Sated Overseer is also really important as well. And Monsanto, what does he do here? I guess he has Battle Fiend to develop right back. And by having that 1-mana minion to play has made a huge difference here for Language Hacker.
Yeah, even if it's not the strongest 1-mana minion,
Right.
it's going to allow him to take the board here, honestly. If he wants it, he could go for Battle Fiend, Hero Power,
Right.
and double trade onto the board with Weapon plus the 1/1 and have a 2/2 over his opponent, which would be parity for what the board has been, despite having a quote-unquote weaker 1-drop than Monsanto. So
Yeah, the
Sated
trick
Overseer just dies.
The trick is that if he plays Battle Fiend, he actually plays directly into Monsanto with a Frozen Shadow Weaver. And so Language Hacker has to weigh, do I want to play this Overseer now, or do I want to save it for later? Next turn you get that extra mana to hero power, for example.
Oh, I see.
And based off the way we know the hands are looking, this is better for Language Hacker. Not to mention that there's still the possibility that whatever he draws ends up being even better to play.
Yeah. And that play did play around specifically the Frozen Shadow Weaver.
Right.
Because he would have enough damage on board to kill it. even though his play for the following turn wouldn't be that great, he'd at least be able to kill the Frozen Shadow Weaver and then develop his own thing instead of. Whereas if he just played the Battle Fiend, his face would have got frozen. He wouldn't be able to kill the Frozen Shadow Weaver, and then he would completely give up tempo. So, yeah, ends up being the correct line. There's the Ultra Greed in me, which says, hold on to it. If you get frozen, who cares? You play Warglaze of Azeroth the turn after, and then you take a little bit of damage, but you make a huge
I
board.
grow impatient.
But that gets heavily punished because, like I said, you take a good amount of damage, and then your opponent has a life lead, and they can switch their game plan to a burn game plan, and also that game plan like auto loses to Outros plus anything.
Oh my goodness! What a draw here for Language Hacker. That's a complete. I mean, that is the best draw in his deck, right?
Yep.
And now Monsanto, who kind of spent a really inefficient turn reacting, once more is on the back foot. It's already tough enough going second in this matchup. That might help, though.
I mean, it allows him to play his own Satyr Overseer here.
Yeah, but the problem is then he doesn't have something to activate the Glaive Bound Adept next turn.
Well, he'd have the second slice.
I see.
Is he just hero
Oh,
powers
yeah, you're
turn
right.
slices here?
Yeah, he's fine on that. So
But-
it ends up being a great draw.
Yeah, I think that's probably honestly the draw that keeps him in the game, right? Because now Language Hacker has to deal with the Satyr Overseer. He doesn't get to capitalize massively with these Warglaves. I mean, still big. These Warglaves are pretty big. It's just
Yeah.
imagine how big it could have been if either one, Monsanto didn't remove the Satyr Overseer, or two, Monsanto had to spend his entire turn playing like Chaos Strike.
Right, and so Monsanto can stabilize, it's just whether or not it's too late, and I think it might be. He has the Glaive Bound Adept turn right here. Then, if Language Hacker doesn't answer it, he still would need 2 turns after for the Glaive Bound Adept to be pushing game-ending damage. So, Monsanto needs 3 turns, when Language Hacker with that Metamorphosis only needs 2. So that, I mean, that just kind of to show you that Monsanto is just a little bit too far behind.
Yep.
So unless I'm miscounting how Monsanto can do this, it seems like he should still commit to playing an Adept.
Time grows short.
In fact, the way he can potentially double dip is if he ignores the 2/2 and tries to go face with the Adept, because then he would put his board down to 16.
I feel like this is the only play that he could make.
Yeah, this is the play that I think most people would gravitate towards immediately. Just trying to think if there's any way for Monsanto to potentially squeeze it out, but Monsanto sees the Metamorphosis, he concedes. There's no way for him to outrace Language Hacker with guaranteed 10 damage to that. And that will do it. Language Hacker wins the series 3-2. And starts off his Grandmaster season for the round robin stages with a W. The newcomers, we had a lot of questions going into it. Empanizado, Language Hacker, and, Papa Jason, how are they going to fare? And Language Hacker getting a win feels pretty good, considering that that's how he was doing in the Swiss stages. He was doing very well in those tournaments.
Yeah. And I like the Spell Druid selection, but we shall see how that fares throughout his other match. And, I'm curious if players are going to pick up on that as opposed to one of the other decks in the lineup. But it worked out for him today, and it works out for a lot of players in APAC. So only time will tell where that deck will settle down in the metagame, but Language Hacker takes the W.
That's right. So with that, we're going to take a long-form break, but in the meantime, this was a very in-depth and technical video provided by Gia. She is going to help you walk through some mulligans of the top players as we get ready for our 4th match, Bloody Face versus Just Saiyan. So that's going to be around 9 to 10 minutes, and when we come back, we're going to get series number 4 started today for Hearthstone Grandmasters America, week number 4. Stay tuned. We'll be back.